For today's story, I want to talk about this indie publisher called Top Hat Studios, which has recently been getting a lot of flack for no real good reason. So this is their website. This is some of the games they've published right here. Everything from games that are meant for a younger player base to more mature titles. And if we go to their Steam page, you can see that they've published everything from visual novels to platformers and Metroidvanias to RPGs. Among their more recent releases is a visual novel going by the name Sense, a cyberpunk ghost story, which launched on Steam back in August 2020 and was recently announced to be releasing on Nintendo Switch. And this is what the game looks like. As you can see, the art style is really cool and it's got this cyberpunk aesthetic. It is very much a cyberpunk themed visual novel with supernatural elements, and the description reads as follows: inspired by classic adventure games and the origins of the survival horror genre, Sense, a cyberpunk ghost story, celebrates the slow cerebral creep of dread instead of relying on over-the-top action or jump scares. With careful attention to pacing, atmosphere, and storytelling, this futuristic tale seamlessly blends 2.5D exploration and problem-solving with suspenseful ghost encounters that act as paranormal glitches in our reality. The game takes place in Neo Hong Kong, 2083, and it sees this female character, Maylin Mak, and it's her task to explore this apartment and discover the secrets of a curse in this apartment. Overall, the game was received positively. So if you go to Steam right now, you can see right here, published by Top Hat Studios, developed by Suzaku. Mostly positive reviews overall, and especially recently, it's got a 96% positive user review rating because a lot of people have been showing solidarity for this game in light of recent backlash that has to do with the fact that the game's art style does feature more exaggerated features. So just looking right here, you can see that certain proportions are, bigger than the average, and scrolling down, you can see that the art style does evoke a bit of that fan servicey element, and most people are okay with that. Might not be to everyone's taste, but hey, this is the artist's expression, so, they can do whatever they want with the art style. But some people have taken great issue with it to the point where the developers and publisher have actually been receiving death threats. And beyond that, a certain vocal minority have been calling for the game to get censored, saying that, the exaggerated features are just egregious and all of these things. And things got out of hand enough that Top Hat Studios was forced to release the following statement in which they highlighted the demand for censorship and their refusal to capitulate to it. So it reads right here: official statement regarding calls demanding censorship of Sense, a cyberpunk ghost story. Our commitment to our audience and to developers is we will never infringe on creative freedom or expression. So let's click on the statement here and read what it says. With the recent news of Sense, a cyberpunk ghost story coming to Nintendo Switch, we are aware of a large number of messages and demands aimed towards the game's console platform release based on lies, claims that it's explicitly pornographic or somehow encourages violence, or most ridiculously, somehow breaks the law. Furthermore, voices have attempted to advocate making sale of the game untenable through demanding harsh censorship aimed towards the developer's art style, with threats to review bomb the game and or harass its distributors. In addition, we have received death threats from those who feel threatened by what essentially boils down to an aesthetic decision of how pixels are arranged on a screen. While disappointed at these behaviors, we are certainly not surprised. So the important thing to highlight here is that this game doesn't go above and beyond what other games with mature themes or visual elements have done before. They've got a kinkier art style and there are mature themes in the game, but this is a mature game. This is the art style that they picked. It doesn't force players to engage in some kind of egregious taboo. It doesn't deliver a message of inciting violence or anything of the sort. It's just a mature story that, out of the blue, some people have suddenly taken umbrage with because it's coming out on Switch. And so the publisher here continues, let us be clear on this, we will not censor the game because of self-centered crowds who care solely about grandstanding. We categorically and absolutely refuse to restrict creative expression. Creators should be allowed the freedom to express themselves, particularly when it is an expression of the subcultures they have been immersed in. As a cyberpunk game, Sense uses imagery and themes relating to a future of hyper-commercialized, over-commodified imagery as part of its cyberpunk theme and inspiration. This is reflected in all character designs. With that said, we expect that this is lost on those attacking the developer for being harmful and somehow inflicting violence and pain. Those who believe words or images inflict violence should perhaps stop spurting their own hateful, false rhetoric and also cease condoning death threats to those they disagree with. Indeed. So this is their reasoning behind the art style. You know, cyberpunk is all about the exploitation of human imagery, human flesh, and so as a reflection of that, they've exaggerated the features of the characters in the game. And whether you think that's clever or not, whether you think that works or not, you know, that's personal preference. But to go as far as saying, well, I don't like that, so it should be censored, even though it's really nothing overly egregious, nothing that other games haven't gone a step above, yeah, it's getting out of hand. The publisher's statement concludes with, "We reject any and all of the aforementioned brazen characterizations of the game, and would like to reiterate our principles against tampering with creators' expressions. We would also like to reiterate this game is rated ESRB Mature 17+, and PEGI 18. This is not an adults-only game, nor have any laws been broken, as some social media commenters have ridiculously claimed out of their biases. The game's rating reflects the target audience, and yet this fact is lost on those who have been led by a will to blindly crusade against their false perceptions." Once again, since a cyberpunk story is rated M17+ and PEGI 18, the game will be released as planned and without censorship on the 7th of January 2021 for Nintendo Switch. It can be pre-ordered and preloaded now on the eShop. The game has passed QA and other platforms, and release dates are being decided. The game will not be censored. We categorically refuse. I mean, the irony is lost on the people claiming the game incites violence when they're the ones actually engaging in violence. The following day, Top Hat Studios followed up with a second statement in which they highlighted some of the awful tweets that they have been getting accusing them of inciting violence and trying to get kids to play a mature game, or, you know, breaking the hearts of little girls who look at this game and like, oh, what will they think? But again, this isn't advertised to be a kid's game. It is intended for a mature audience. This is just a sample of some of the tweets that they've been getting. I'm not going to read through this, but if you are curious about them, you can maybe pause the video and check them out. But all kinds of unreasonable accusations and slandering just because the proportions of female characters in the game are a bit more exaggerated than usual, and just because it has some of those fan servicey elements that it isn't really this big of a deal. So on top of publicly highlighting some of the awful messages that they've been getting, Top Hat Studio said, "We originally did not want to make this post as to not accidentally incite a search for those posters and cause further fights. However, as there are now industry-adjacent people slandering, gaslighting us as liars, we have compiled a sampling from Twitter, Facebook, and email. Skepticism is healthy in this industry, but it is not universally applied. Not only were many of these comments actively findable in less than 10 seconds to verify, but many curious individuals seem to have a vetted interest in slandering us as liars because of their connections. We don't blame people for being skeptical, but keep this energy toward other claims. This isn't a marketing campaign. The game released 5 months ago originally. This was a preemptive response to what we saw as a rising, ridiculous spread of lies and slurs aimed at us. We can play semantics, but if you can't understand why response to such is needed, you're being willfully obtuse. We couldn't let false, hateful info to spread, and also wanted to reinforce our stance against creative infringement. It certainly got bigger than we expected. With that said, we appreciate sincerely the overwhelming support. Really, as we said, we didn't want to make this post, but we aren't going to allow people to spread lies, no less from those with a vetted interest in calling us liars. We aren't changing Sense's content." Hell yes. I'll remind you that the backlash really started happening when the game was announced on Nintendo Switch, and a small segment of people called out the publisher for releasing this mature game on a platform that a lot of kids play. But if you go to Nintendo's website right now and look up Sense, a Cyberpunk Ghost Story, you can see right here immediately there's an age verification. And so let's input some numbers here. And you can see right here, rated M for mature. Nobody has advertised this game as being for kids, and the very notion that Nintendo Switch is a family-friendly console with only kids-friendly games, like, what are you talking about? The console has Doom in it. It has Witcher 3 in it, which is one of the most mature games from a visual and storytelling standpoint. Like, Switch is for both adults and kids, and you tailor your game purchases based on, you know, who the game is intended for. It should also be noted that the game has been consistently transparent about its mature content. So right here on Steam, for example, the mature content description reads, Sense does not contain adult or explicit content. There is no full nudity, but features skimpy, semi-revealing outfits and mature themes. And the rest of those mature themes are listed out in the rest of this paragraph. But yeah, essentially, some of the outfits are revealing, some of the features are exaggerated. That's as far as the kinkier elements of the game go. Not to mention the double standards of wanting to censor this game, but apparently Cyberpunk 2077, that's okay. That's alright, even though there is full-on bare flesh with some grotesque scenery and conditions of bodies strewn about the game world, and just far more visually mature elements than this game has shown in its trailers and screenshots. The dissenters have been drowned out by the wave of support that the company has gotten after releasing their statement. Again, 17.3 thousand likes, a bunch of retweets, thousands of retweets, and people down here kind of expressing some of the hypocrisy surrounding this and expressing that the comments are ridiculous based on the content in the game and the fact that it isn't really going out of its way to offend. Again, it's just telling the story it wants to tell. And some of the mature elements may not be for everyone, but to say that it's so awful that it should be censored, that's a woeful exaggeration on the part of the angry mob. And I think it's great that the development studio and the publisher didn't capitulate to the pressure of a vocal minority of people who seem to be saying very unreasonable things that aren't accurate to the true nature of the game. I do think community feedback is important, and it's important for developers to listen to the community, but the hate that they've been getting, it clearly isn't from their community who actually are aware of the game's content. At the end of the day, there is something of a happy ending in that the developer's game, Sense, a Cyberpunk Ghost Story, is now much more widely known. In an ironic twist, the haters ended up actually helping the game, and it probably boosted some of its sales, and you can see again from the recent positive reviews that people are kind of showing support and solidarity, and so at least there is that. And the game will be coming out on Switch. It's been certified by Nintendo. It doesn't have anything in it that Nintendo is rejecting. And again, it has all of the appropriate labels. The game's clearly not meant for kids, and it's a matter of personal preference. And you can have your preferences. You can say, I don't like the story or the art style, but to call for this game censorship, I think it's crossing a line. But that's just one man's take on this whole situation. Let me know in the comments below what your take is on Sense, a Cyberpunk Ghost Story, and the development surrounding this indie cyberpunk visual novel. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.